large enterprises as well as a number of smaller associations, meeting management companies. So Microsoft, Oracle, CA, Tableau are some of our larger customers, along with the likes of Boy Scouts of America, Disney. And within certain, the program management function is actually something that I brought in. I report to the executive team and have responsibility across all departments for operations. And so program management is obviously a key piece of it. Leveraging Smartsheet has been a great way to try to get these little hidden factories of activity surfaced with more visibility, and to try to establish some level of consistent operation execution. So that's been my interest. And actually, this was thrown out to me by one of your, I guess, by our account reps. So I'm kind of interested to see how this goes today. I don't have a lot of expectations, but I'm interested in looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we're going to make it very interactive today, Ben. So I want your ideas and insights and share them as we go along. And we're going to interleave it with again, overview of some of these key components and how we can help with optimizing PMO environments. So great to have you. Why don't we go ahead and Caitlin McCormick. Caitlin, would you mind introducing yourself and just giving us a quick little backdrop of your interest and your background, role, responsibilities, please?
Definitely. So we are just starting in my department, project management. We have a PMO office for the company, but our department hasn't been graced with their skills. So I have stepped up to be the project manager for the entire department across multiple different business units. I am doing kind of like a proof of concept with Smartsheet in our environment. No one here has used it before. And so we are trying to kind of see how other people have been using it, get some good ideas, and implement on the right foot to start off with.
Okay, that sounds very good. Caitlin, thank you so much for joining. I'm just going to essentially go down the list alphabetically, if you don't mind. So the next person that is on our list here, Colin, would you mind taking a minute and introducing yourself and sharing your role and responsibilities? I think that's Colin Neese. Yeah, Colin, there you are.
Are you hearing me?
I hear you now. Yeah, very good.
Oh, sorry, I had my microphone muted. I'm a business systems analyst at a higher education research university in Upper Michigan, and my office is we're kind of rolling. We play some portions of some project management. We're already users of Smartsheet, but we're trying to leverage it a bit more to use more of the project management portions for keeping everybody up to date, reminders, and keeping track of tasks and things like that. So my supervisor actually asked me to sit in on this just to kind of see what we can do, and kind of that's our route.
Okay. Oh, that's great. Good to have you on board. John Martin. John, you joined us here, and again, excuse me, sorry. And then Joyce Burke. Joyce, if you get a chance, could you give us a little bit of a backdrop?
Sure, I'm Joyce Burke, and I am doing enterprise project management at a bank, and it's new to the bank. We have used Smartsheets before, but I am beginning to look at the project side of it to incorporate it in for a consistent process across the board.
So one quick question on that front, Joyce. I'm kind of interested in this. Is that for potentially client onboarding types of projects, or are those more internally focused projects?
Right now, they're internally focused projects, but we use vendors also.
Okay, very good, very good. Thanks for joining us.
Sure.
Next up is Liana. Liana, are you on the line there with Presence Learning?
Hi there, my name is Liana. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Sorry,
I lost my voice a bit yesterday. So my background is in consulting, and I just started at this company called Presence Learning about 2 years ago, and they are a telepractice company, so education technology, and we connect children with special needs around the world with therapists. So I am one of 2 project managers at the company, I mainly specialize in operations, so I'm mostly internally focused. One of my big projects for the next couple of months are really establishing our best project management practices. So we've been dabbling in a number of project management software companies, and we implemented Smartsheet in December and have been enjoying using it so far, but I love hearing about how other people use it, so that's why I wanted to participate today.
That's great, and very worthy cause there. Great work, Leanna. Also, finally, Shelby Keene. Shelby, if you have just a minute there, could you share with us your role, responsibilities, and a little bit of your background?
Sure, no problem. I work for Community Bridges. I'm a facilities director, and we have recently started utilizing Smartsheet for projects that we have for opening up new facilities throughout the state. So our IT department is actually also using it. So we're really trying to figure out how to kind of work together to get our sites up and going.
Excellent. Okay. Shelby, thanks so much for joining us. And thank you all again for taking the time to introduce yourselves. What I'd like to do now is go ahead, we'll go and get started with our discussion here in terms of our roundtable. I'd like to get it going in terms of just get some initial thoughts about some of the challenges that I came across in some recent interviews that I conducted with about 25 director, VP level individuals with PMO organizations. And before I get into that aspect of things, I know many of you are familiar with Smartsheet as a collaborative work management platform. I'm not going to go through these all four pillars because I think you're pretty familiar with them. I do want to point out, as far as the discussion today, we're focused in on scale. And I think we've heard across from Ben and Caitlin, Colin, Joyce, Leanne, Shelby, you're all dealing with multiplicity of projects, if you will. I'll just use that as a general term. And so the idea of scaling this at a functional level is a challenge that we see with our particular platform. So if we take a look at some of these challenges and think about scale from that standpoint, from the process standpoint, what we've learned from these interviews is that there's a number of different challenges that present obstacles, if you will. They prevent the ability to do functional scale. For example, changes in business environment, companies getting acquired, or process changes, sometimes using individual tools like Excel and Microsoft Project in different departments, different groups doing things different ways in terms of methods and processes. And a big also item that we hear a lot about is the ability to get visibility into what's going on, especially as we talk about the multiplicity, if you will, or the scale of these particular solutions. It really introduces a lot of challenges. So, and then this sort of encapsulates this. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this or beat this to death, but the point being is that kind of they distill it down into these 5 areas and really makes it difficult for managing these projects. So for our discussion round table here today, the idea behind this is to get everybody involved in this a little bit and sharing maybe for a minute or two here, the next slide here, which will illustrate a little bit about, what do you find most challenging about managing these projects at scale? And maybe we could start, instead of Ben going with you, we'll start with Shelby first and work our way the other direction, if you will. Maybe just, a minute or two on maybe some of the challenges that you might be encountering, if you don't mind sharing with a larger group.
Sure, no problem. So I think the challenges that we have dealt with is just getting all of the different people that are involved implemented into the Smartsheet and kind of picking up where we are. So that's something that that we've struggled. Not exactly sure what you're looking for on that one.
No, that's fine. And what we can do on this bit of the exercise for our discussion, you just, maybe pick up 1 or 2 of these that you see, or maybe if there's others that we're not listing here, just kind of share those quickly, then we can go through the list here fairly quickly. Is that right? Maybe next up, Leanne, would you have from the list here, any of these challenges resonate with you?
Yes, definitely. I think one of our bigger challenges is the fact that about 50% of our workforce is remote. So dealing with remote employees has been really challenging for process improvement and managing projects. Another big one is that we have a lot of, I would call them tech averse, people who came from education or previous teachers who are not used to having to log into multiple programs. It's just really hard to get them to not only check their email every day, but then log into a separate system to give me updates. And then the result of that is mainly just tons of process changes and a really quick pace of business. And it's just hard to follow. It's hard to track all the changes.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Leanne. Joyce, what about you? What at the bank? What would be one or two key challenges?
So I think for myself, the key challenges are the PMO is new to the bank, and not that they haven't done projects before, but they haven't used a more formalized process. So changing that culture and getting everybody to follow those processes has been, pretty challenging. And then for me, there actually is a lot going on at the bank. So to make sure that I can have the visibility into everything that's happening all at one time. So.
That's not uncommon, Joyce. We see that. In fact, I remember in a couple of these interviews that I conducted, again, this idea of instituting best practices is a challenge, and doing that across the board. I heard that a lot. Colin at MTU, what about you? Sorry about that.
The office I currently work in at the moment, we're fairly new. We were created about a year-ish ago, and a lot of it is kind of managing projects from the business side, working with our campus IT partners and stuff. So the changing business environment, this is brand new. We're kind of in that, let's develop our project management methodology and how we're going to take it from there. So that's been a big learning step for me. And then also managing multiple projects and the portfolio management. We have some things tracked in maybe one or two different ticketing systems, and then there's an alternative project management system, and we're trying to pull all that together into one spot. And that's where we're running into also. And then we're growing enough now that I'm losing visibility into all of our statuses. So yeah, these points really ring true.
Okay, very good. Three more. Caitlin, what about a quick update from your side of it at drive time?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the challenges that other people have pointed out ring true for us. One of our biggest issues is that we don't have any standard tools that we're using today from a project management standpoint. And we're also very fast-paced with our project timelines, quickly pivoting, shifting priorities. You can be working on one thing at the beginning of the week, and 3 days later, 10 more things are on your list that have become a higher priority. So we moved really quickly from that aspect of what's best for the business and with the business value, and just managing all of the different projects that are going on at one time. We have about, just for myself, there's about 8 to 15 projects moving at one time. So finding one way that I can give leadership that status update across all those projects, but also managing all the resources that might be touching all those projects at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, no standardized tools there. That's an interesting one. Ben, at certain with event management, that you're tackling there and working with a lot of those PMO operations cross team. What are you seeing from your perspective there?
Yeah, I share a lot of the same challenges that the other folks have brought up, and the fact is that we don't have a broad program management function. So this is being done by the teams that are executing. So there is a multiplicity of tools. There's, it's difficult to really propagate process standardization and tool standardization, and then get visibility to all of this. So I've been working to kind of corral a lot of it, but it's always an adventure.
That's always an adventure. I like that one.
Yeah.
So, by the way, we have one more person that's joined us here. Dan, not to put you on the spot there, but if you did want to share some of the challenges that at this particular point, that's great. If not, we can just go ahead and move on.
Believe Dan there was in a relatively loud office, so if
I
he came on, we might not be able to hear him.
Is that what's going on? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, thank you all for that, and thank you for sharing that. I think we did get some interesting enlightenments. And one of the things that I'd like Leanne's point about the remote workforce. That was an interesting one, and I think that speaks to some of the challenges that we have with evolving processes and things of that nature. And then again, Joyce too, in terms of culture, this idea of of learnings and getting people all on the same page. You know, sometimes it's not all about technology. Sometimes it's really about people and process first, then technology. So what we're going to do, we're going to just take a minute now and just seed you with a couple of other ideas. Interesting, Ben, I found your comments there about standardization that you just shared with us. Interesting, and what we're finding is that the usual approach is this sort of idea of standardization across the board, end to end, top to bottom. What we also find out, though, is that it typically introduces some issues in terms of acceptance. If we can take a look at what we have found, and I heard this several times, is that standardization can work against you too. If you think about it, not standards, we definitely need standards and we definitely need this, but standardization, this idea of rigidity, of a straitjacket, if you will, tends to push, you get a lot of pushback from users. And then what happens, you start having to get into this situation where, well, okay, now we have to train more and educate more and get these users to adopt these strict processes and methods and technologies. And what happens there is you end up starting to spend more money on the actual training that you spend on the software, sometimes up to 3x for implementing these. So that's one issue that we see. And the second is the element related back to this idea of business processes. So these business processes change. And a lot of times that's because the implementation of a PPM system can be so, it takes so much time and so much investment that by the time you get around to actually rolling it out, it's like an ERP system, you end up almost having to reinvent or reconfigure your processes. And of course, at that time, all the money spent is under the water under the bridge. So our approach here that we're trying to advocate, and we would love to get some insights from you on this, is this notion of consistency and instead of standardization. And what we're saying with consistency is that you have this idea or this ability to, if you will, apply guardrails to enforce your standards where it matters. And what I mean by that is, you know, we can have some examples. I'll just illustrate for you, and then we might, you know, we won't go through all of you, but if one of you wants, or two of you wants to volunteer here, some thoughts. But what I mean by consistency is this, is, for example, being able to create a standard budget template that has, say, for example, controlled data entry in it for project codes and accounting. Of course, you want that to be a very standard approach to dealing with the monies of the company. However, at the same time, you want to enable the user to, through like a Smartsheet user interface, the ability to update information using simple drop-down selectors or adding columns, the ability to be flexible in terms of how it relates to that template relates to that budget process. Another example might be setting up, for example, a facilities management template that has standard tasks and subtasks, but give the user the flexibility to update and change those dates associated with those tasks or change the task description. So it's this balance, if you will, of you know, looking at the various different elements there. So what we'll do is, if you don't mind, what we might do is call on Caitlin and or Shelby, maybe call on you first, Caitlin, to have a think about this idea of consistency and see if that resonates with you and what your ideas and thoughts might be, that as opposed to taking this more of a standardized approach, which, you know, again, introduces complexities for your users to adopt the solution. Caitlin, any thoughts or comments on that?
I definitely agree that consistency is more of what we're going for, just something that gets everyone on the same page. I think that, you know, some of the struggles that we can come across if you don't have a very structured environment and it's very free-flowing is the issue with project intake. Your second point there is just that you have so many different things coming from a million different directions. I mean, right now we all take our projects through emails or people coming and walking up, and finding a way to bring that all together and kind of make that more of a consistent intake process, something that everyone knows how to request that project and we know what we're going to be prioritizing against. And I think that also kind of goes along with the organizational strategy. I mean, you have to have that breakdown of, you know, what does the company really want? How are we going to be measuring that business value across all of those different projects? And I think that with that, you have better execution and tracking kind of bringing everything together along with that collaboration. So I think that, the strategy and the intake and prioritization kind of assist with the rest of the pieces here.
That's really good. Very, very good feedback there, Caitlin. Shelby, did you want to elaborate on that or how that pertains to you at Sea Bridges?
Yeah, I definitely would piggyback off of what she just said, just kind of getting everybody on board. There's people that, some of us do use the program. There's other people in the organization don't. So really just, again, pushing on that consistency portion is if we're consistently staying on top of where we're at with our tasks, a lot of that has to be integrated with other departments within the company to make sure that everybody kind of stays in line. So getting the users to be consistent, it's kind of pointless to use something if everybody's not on board and they're not being consistent, because you really don't know where you're at with your project.
Excellent. Okay, very good. Thank you both for that feedback. And again, the reason we do have this particular slide up on here is that we do believe that for this to affect your project life cycle, if you will, to put that into motion, to make that a critical part of your operations, you do need consistency across all these various different elements of a project life cycle. What we're going to do now is we're going to switch, and we thought what we do is walk you through, highlight maybe a quick overview demonstration of how this idea of consistency at scale, or consistency with functional scale, is actually implemented in a controlled environment using Smartsheet. Rajiv, did you want to walk us through that?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So we talked about the notion of driving consistency in 4 or 5 of the discrete parts of the project lifecycle, right? So how do you prioritize intake? How do you then drive that in terms of consistent project initialization, consistent collaboration experiences, and then visibility and reporting? And largely today, when we think about the PM landscape and you think about what we're using within Smartsheet, for most of it, it's in the track and reporting kind of capability layer. When you're trying to scale that across hundreds of projects, actually thinking about the demand/intake management systems becomes really important, and like driving consistency in the reporting becomes really important. So that's kind of what we want to show you in terms of the demo. So we're going to walk through a quasi-IT PMO-oriented scenario where someone actually requests a new project idea through a web form. It comes into a demand management system. We have a multi-stage approval concept here. So we have 3 stages of approval. And once the project is approved, we can then drive it through a consistent initialization experience through Control Center that drives new project creation, which then drives consistency in that summary reporting and the exec reporting and dashboards. Shannon, do you want to pass me presenter control? Happy to. Okay. Okay, so we kind of want to start at the end. And what you're seeing here is a mock of an IT PMO dashboard that kind of shows you that we have 134 total projects going on. It shows you a little bit of the budget spend and how you're tracking on the budget spend, but also like really quickly shows you what are the key KPIs that the PMO cares about, and this is categorized based on the initiatives within the IT PMO. So automatically segmenting the 134 projects within the right groups and showing you how you're performing across these groups and life cycles. And of course, you can still go create like fairly detailed views. This is built on top of Sites, a dashboarding capability within Smartsheet. So this is fairly easy to build widget-driven interface. So let's start at the beginning of the process where someone wants to request a IT project. They go through the simple web form, they fill out the key details that are requested, and this drives consistency in the data that you're expecting. What that then feeds is our overall demand management queue here, where we can go in and look at all of the different items that actually exist as like things that people want. So we see the new request that's come in. Daniel's made the request. I can go in and say, okay, everything looks right over here. I think this is a medium level effort project. And so you can kind of do basic resource allocation stuff and approve the project. Once the project is approved, this automatically triggers a notification to the segment lead or in this case, the person that owns the application lifecycle management discipline, and they will then get notified, and they can do simple things like from here, go in and initiate a Skype conversation if they wanted to actually do that, or if everything looks right, they can go and approve it. This is where our new notifications come in and say, okay, once a segment approval is completed, send Rajiv an email to say, go answer the rest of the, approve the remaining projects. As I come in to approve it, I can go in and simply see, okay, here are segment approved projects. I can filter the list down and then go in and approve this as an easy mechanism, right? This kind of process makes sure that there are checks and balances in terms of which projects get through into the actual PMO experience, but also takes in all of the project request data that's coming in at the top of the funnel. Once a new project is created, a PMO can go in or the PM can go in and say, okay, here's my new project. I have multiple types of projects that are defined. So each of these are projects. So if you want to think about what a project type is, they are a collection of entities that are made up of different kinds of sheets and reports and dashboards that form a work unit. So think of it as I have a traditional IT project, I have an audit type of project, I have an event project. They're all different discrete project types, and making them available make sure that you can actually start on the right project type.
If you have any questions as Rajiv is walking through this, feel free to pose them in the chat panel of your GoToWebinar interface. I want to make sure this is all landing and making sense to you. But...
Yeah, and we'll pause here in a second and take some questions before we go too far. But I want to kind of walk you through the overall flow, right? Right in here, you can actually go in and select the existing project type. So one of the things you're noticing is I selected Skype for Business. All of the data that were associated with it actually showed up. Only the approved projects show up in this list, which means if you're going through this experience, you can't actually start a project that is not approved. I can add additional pieces of data, like in here, I'm going to say this is in the approved stage, not yet ready to start, or maybe I should move it to live. The kickoff date is right after Memorial Day. The due date is actually listed in there. So like the rest of the data comes in and they're uneditable. So they kind of, you're retaining the original scope of work without changing the scope of work. And that makes it like lockdown experience that you want for just the pieces of reporting that you care about. It also like manages sharing experiences in a cumulative manner so that's always kept together. It takes a couple of minutes for it to provision, but I wanted to pause here for a second and make sure that what we have gone through now is an initial request comes in, it goes through a demand management queue, and we are starting a new project based on an approved idea that came in through my intake process. I want to pause here and see if there are questions or reactions to what we have seen and how this part of it works. Daniel?
So far, no questions asked, but wanted to give people a chance to pose anything here, make sure this is making sense. The flow as is demonstrated is configurable to your processes. So this isn't something that we come in and just say this is the rigid solution that you get. This is something where our consulting team will actually configure it to your business processes, be that at a bank or at any other type of organization.
Okay, so the thing you're noticing here is a new project got created. It created a brand new folder. The folder got renamed with Skype for Business Phase 2 rollout. The sheets within the folder got renamed, so I can actually open up one of these sheets to show you what really happened within this. You're noticing we created a new section within our traditional project management sheets called Summary, and this actually houses all of the metadata that surrounds the project. So as I go make changes either from the intake process or from here, so let's say I convert this from green to yellow and save it, that is actually going into my project status level here, and then it shows up in my summary dashboards. So we're separating the reporting processes by going through this metadata concept around a project, and that allows us to separate the reporting experiences from the project management experiences. the thing that we're preserving as we go through this is at the end of the day, I can come in and say, this is great, but I need to actually manage this project slightly differently for whatever reason. And I'm going to convert this into an agile status process. So I can go make this a drop-down list and say, here's my backlog items, here's my in-progress items, and here are done. And now I've very simply created something that I can switch over and manage my entire life cycle in an agile board as opposed to a traditional kind of a process, right? So we're retaining the flexibility at the end user level in terms of making changes for how the project works. At the end of the day, what this allows us to do is drive centralized reporting through a centralized summary reporting sheet. And so this summary reporting sheet gets updated. So you can see that now I have 135 projects. My new project went into application lifecycle management and should have shown up right in the bottom of this list. And all of this got done through automation, through Control Center. So now the reporting piece is always consistent. So when someone's coming and looking at their overall summary dashboard, the dashboard is reflecting that we have 135 projects. It's all live. It's connected up into my Power BI experience. And so now I can actually go do drill downs from, okay, I want to show what's happening in my application lifecycle management projects and where those projects are going across like my different resource pools and who's working on it and all that good stuff. So that's kind of a super quick run through in terms of how we take the concept of consistency in different elements and stitch them together to allow you to create either a centralized PMO experience or even a decentralized PMO experience where you can actually have multiple people voluntarily come into this, but still participate in driving visibility across the organization in a consistent way so that the executive team doesn't have to actually like think about 25 different experiences so that they can actually look at one place to get their overall set of truth.
So that really is a very good walkthrough of the end-to-end approach here. And what I'd like to do is a couple quick concepts, and then maybe we can have another round of conversation here. First of all, I think a good point was brought up during Rajiv's presentation. Ben, that was a good point that you raised there. And what we want to make sure is clear here is that this is both an approach that can work very well for a centralized situation where you have centralized, PMO organization that set up standard project types. However, this can also easily be deployed in an environment, not only in a decentralized format where you have multiple groups in an organization and you're still applying this consistent approach, but also the point here, and I think it's illustrated in this particular slide, is this ability to have an aggregate view of all the various different projects that are going on in a real-time view too. So this allows you to get a common understanding of the status and progress that's going on. So let me quickly just kind of touch on this slide here for a second. What you saw in that previous demonstration in the pyramid, again, that represents the project type itself, and you have a series of sheets that make up the bottom level of that particular project. So what you saw in the illustration was an intake sheet that fed this particular project type, and then there's a series of sheets that can be interrelated. And then the reports that are linked to those particular sheets, for example, a project plan, a budget tracker, and so on, and then the individual dashboard. And with the control center idea, you can see how this would be used to stamp out multiple versions of that particular project type and instance, and then have that ability to automatically link those particular instances up to the aggregate dashboard and reports. So that in mind here, what we're going to do is turn it over to Rajiv. Did you have a question, Rajiv?
Yeah, let's open it up and have a few people comment on it. So maybe we can start with Ben. Ben, can you give us your so you talked about not having process standardization and having to deal with what I'm rephrasing and calling as accidental PMs, not professionally trained PPM specialists. How do you think a process like this would actually allow you to scale managing projects across your organization?
I mean, I think part of the devil's in the details in terms of the setup. I will say that, you know, I worked at Oracle for quite some time. I worked as a manager in the IT department, and this is very reflective of the kind of construct that we had. There was a central, you know, anybody in the organization could submit a request for a project that would be reviewed. It was through a tool similar to this. They'd go through a review process. You know, we'd do a portfolio review periodically, decide which ones we were going to do. You know, and I think that this construct works very well in that environment. I think what I'm dealing with now is, as you said, accidental PMs, and you know, I think that the idea of whether you want to call it standardization or consistency, what's important is that we have a common language so that folks understand where projects are at. When it's in a, you know, if you've got a standardized set of phases, people can say, okay, well, we know that it's in this phase. You may be executing it slightly differently. And you may be, you know, building a truck versus, you know, you know, doing something else. But at the end of the day, we know it's in the design phase, and so X, Y, and Z is supposed to happen in this phase, and that's the kind of consistency and standardization I'm working to build out. With the setup here, I think the challenge is A, getting it set up, and B, having a means by which that kind of variation can work, you know, and not break the system. I think that there are some things that, you know, have to be locked down because you need those certain data hooks in order to be able to have a consolidated view. But otherwise, my question is really around execution and how you would implement that.
Okay, that's fair feedback, and we think about this as this consistency in the setup and the rollout processes, and that allows you to like drive the scale. But this also becomes a really great mechanism for you to distribute the best practices on. Ideally, this is what you should do. So even if they decide not to do it, they're not deciding not to do it because of ignorance, but they're deciding not to do it because they've made a judgment call, and you're forcing them to make those judgment calls. Let's go in and maybe have Colin or Joyce see if you have anything different to add to this mix. Colin, are you there?
You know, one of the things that we've seen to piggyback a little bit here off of what Rajiv has said is that by adding in that flexibility, you're saying, hey, this is how we would do things, and there's certain information that we must track. But then again, that's your control side of that balance. But then adding in the flexibility to say, but you can make a judgment call and do it another way. As long as we've got these 4 metrics, we can take the reporting out of this. That corporate needs to have visibility across all our projects. So it's this delicate balance of giving your users options and implementing the controls where you need it that I think the Control Center really offers.
Joyce, what I'd like to ask, because back at the bank again, when you were doing your introductions, you were talking a bit about the culture shift, and one of those elements you brought up was the juggling aspect of that and visibility. What aspect of this do you see visibility being enhanced from what you've just seen in this walkthrough?
So I like the idea of, you know, the system calculating up all of that into a sheet. Right now I use a heat map, which is pretty common to me from the PMOs that I have been in. Just with the red, yellow, green status, just so senior management, the board, whoever needs to see it, can see a very quick snapshot of everything that's going on at the bank at one time. They are very much already embraced it from day one. My thing is, when you are all talking about what, you know, consistency versus, you know, structure, to me, they're almost one and the same at this stage of the ball game, because I am trying to change culture. And not introduce a lot, like, you know, almost like a small kind of baby step kind of process in the beginning, just to get them more used to the process in general. I will say, if you go back to a couple of slides ago, what I have found here in this particular, nope, even one more, I think, than that one. So right there, yep. So you had, nope, go yeah, right there. There you go. I have to say that when I came to the bank, I instituted the business case process. But in my mind, I try to put as much upfront into the narratives because we want as much information as humanly possible in the beginning. Did you do your risk assessment? What is your business case? Are you looking at 2 options or 3 options? Put them in the business case. It's actually worked out really, really well here. They're not used to documenting. But they have actually embraced that documenting very well because it's actually helped them think through what they're doing. So we have all the right.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, you know, I mean, if you take all that into play in an organization that is, you know, instituting enterprise project management, they've made some. They have embraced very well what the baby steps that they're getting. And they're not really that baby. I mean, but to them, they're, you know, they're just smaller steps, I guess. If I was to throw all this at them in one time, I think they'd collapse in.
That's a very good point. I think you have to crawl, walk, run many times in an incremental way. Joyce, one thing I was going to ask you on scoring, are you using some element of prioritizing projects as they come in? Do you have a formal scoring process to determine what's the highest?
Yes, it's in the business case. It's actually in the business case. They have to do a CBA in the business case. It's a bank, so they're pretty used to doing such things. You know, and then, you know, we're just going by the, you know, what's the highest priority where. We only have so many resources. You know, sometimes everybody wants to get things done in January. I noticed that when I did the first heat map, it was like, okay, so when do you all want to get these done? Oh, January. Yeah, we only have so many resources. We need to talk about that. You know, no wonder you guys are, you know, having a hard time. We need to load balance better.
You know, the interesting thing is you're not the only one. I recall an interview last week that I did where I was talking about project prioritization, and one of the IT leaders that I was speaking to said every single person's project is the high priority, and that's the problem. So that's not an uncommon situation.
So actually what we've been doing is I've been bringing in like the division heads, department heads, and when we go through a business case, so they can all hear it. Okay, so who else is affected? Because, you know, you need to look at it more wing to wing than what you have been. So, you know, you might think it's your department, but where does this work come from and where does this work go to? You know, so it's just it's a lot of culture change.
Yep, that's very true. Well, I want to be just kind of cognizant of the time here and watching where we are. I'd like to, first of all, just see if there are any other comments. Shelby, Leanne, Joyce, Colin, Caitlin, Ben, and Dan, if you'd like to share any closing comments on what you've seen and what you might perceive as you know, the value that's been shared here in this time and hearing others. Just open it up for general. Maybe Shelby, did you have any particular closing thoughts or comments on what you saw here? She might be on mute. Shelby might be on mute. No comments. Leanne, anything that you wanted to share with us?
Not really. I just found myself really enthusiastically nodding through Joyce's entire kind of what she was sharing. I just thought it was a really good point. So nothing in particular to share, sorry.
Okay, very good. Joyce, any closing comments there?
I do have a really, I don't know if will you be providing the deck? I mean, I'd like to use it myself to think about, you know, integration and stuff. I didn't know if you were going to be providing a copy of the deck out.
Yes, we definitely will. Yeah, we'll provide the deck. In fact, the recording of this too will make available to you if you want to share it with your colleagues too. So yeah, definitely we'll do that. Colin, we'll give it one more try, one more attempt on your side.
Yeah, no, I was kind of in the same boat, nodding along, going, "Yep, this is what we're trying to do," and it sounds like the kind of same roadblocks and everything that I'm currently experiencing as everybody else is. So this is this looks like it could actually benefit being an office with not very many people. I'm trying to automate as many things as possible, so I'm not recreating the wheel every single time. So I would see this being having the ability to save some good upfront some upfront project and then just management portions going forward.
Excellent. And thank you for that, Colin. Caitlin, from your perspective.
Again, yeah, I think that everybody in the PM world experiences the same thing with, everybody getting on board with the same methodologies and consistency across all of these with, almost every company I've ever worked for. I think that the biggest thing that I would have with this would just be adoption and our leadership groups not just seeing it as overhead, but trying to pitch it as something that would provide that increased efficiencies and that assistance with all the visibility and project management in our groups.
And Caitlin, that's a real good point. It's a nice segue actually to this one slide I'll just share quickly. If you would like to, our team can work closely with each of your teams and help you with assessing, the impact, how we can address these challenges and monetize that, more importantly, if that helps to build that case for consistency across the platform there. Ben, I wanted to also give you the opportunity for a closing comment, if you can share with us.
Sure. Yeah. No, I agree with the group that I share a lot of the same challenges, and appreciate having the forum to have a dialogue. I think what you've shown is, if you were to plop this down, for our team, that would be great. I'm always thinking about how to set these solutions up and how to actually implement them, and that's where the devil is in the details. I do share the concern that you need to take baby steps. So what we can do to incrementally move the organization along is the best way to get results.
Sounds good, and we definitely will take you up on that. Again, this business value that we're sharing here is on a project or per person type basis. So these kinds of savings can add up very darn quickly. There was actually one other person, and Suzanne, you don't need to. I don't want to put you on the spot here at the last minute. I don't know if you were able to come in early or you had a chance to listen to the majority of the presentation, but did you want to share anything with respect to either your role responsibilities, what you heard from the team in this conversation, just to say hi? Suzanne, are you there? Maybe not. Okay, that's all right. That's okay. Well, again, on behalf of all of my colleagues here, Rajiv and Daniel and myself and the team that reached out to you in terms of your account executives, we would like to thank you all for sharing your time. Really lively group, great responses. I think we shared a lot of good insights with each other, and continued affirmation of this idea of let's successfully marry the flexibility and standards and controls together and get ourselves into a good position with our PMO. We'll be following up with more information, and again, just like to thank you all for your time today. Have a great day and great afternoon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we